Ladies and gentlemen, we are watching the truth surface piece by piece. And today, brace yourselves because we got a bombshell fusion that changes everything about Charlie Kirk's assassination. Because for days, the media told you that it was just rumors. They said, oh, don't believe it, don't share it, it's a conspiracy. But now, two separate sources, guys, a young neighbor who saw it with his own eyes and a retired FBI profiler who spent 22 years studying killers. They're both confirming the same radical path that Tyler Robinson was on. Now, think about this, guys. Eyewitness testimony colliding with elite FBI behavioral analysis. Now, on the one side, there's a neighbor describing the shooter's secret life, the kiss on the doorstep, the doctor visits, the radical talk, okay? But on the other side, an FBI insider maps out the disturbing psychology, the insecurity, the wound collecting, the obsession that spiraled into violence. And together, they're painting a picture that the left can no longer deny. Now, this wasn't random. This wasn't confusion. This was a radicalized young man living in lies, fueled by hate, and targeting Charlie Kirk because, well, Kirk stood for everything he wasn't. Now, folks, this is where it gets really dark, okay? Once you hear how the neighbor story lines up point for point with the FBI profiler's warning, you're going to understand why the establishment is panicking because the narrative that they've been trying to sell you, it just got destroyed. Now, folks, if you appreciate the updates, hit the like button and subscribe. Okay, today, President Donald J. Trump's America. Tonight, I'm telling you, the truth has broken wide open. Two separate sources, miles apart, have now lined up to confirm the very same chilling reality about Charlie Kirk's shooter, Tyler, or at least alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson. This is a young neighbor on the ground and a veteran FBI profiler with decades of experience. Now, one saw it play out in real life. The other one dissected the mind behind it. When you put these two together, the radical path of this shooter is undeniable. All right, so I want to go and start with the neighbor because this is where the bombshell eyewitness testimony shatters the lies that the media wanted you to believe. Now, for days, the spin was that Robinson was just a quiet young man living with his parents. But that was a cover. In reality, Robinson, based on the information that we have so far today, was living in a townhouse just 5 miles away, and he wasn't alone. His roommate was more than a roommate. The neighbor saw it with his own eyes. Tyler Robinson and his transitioning male boyfriend, known online as Lance Twiggs, kissing outside their home. So he overheard them talking about doctor's appointments for the transition. He described them holding hands, acting as a couple. This is not rumor. This is not internet conspiracy. This is an eyewitness who rode by on his bike, saw it happening in broad daylight, and they confirmed what others had whispered. And this matters because it destroys the narrative that Robinson was isolated or misunderstood. He was leading a secret life. He was leading a secret life. This is one that was fed directly into the radicalized, confused identity that he carried into this horrific act. So here's where it got even darker, though, because while the neighbor gave us the what, a former FBI profiler gave us the why. And this is actually equally important, okay? Now listen up. His analysis is bone-chilling. Robin Dreeke, who spent 22 years inside the Bureau studying killers, says Robinson fits the exact pattern that we've seen time and time again in recent shooters. Insecurity, wound collecting, the constant victim mindset, and most importantly, a complete lack of curiosity. Now, Charlie Kirk was curious. He thrived on dialogue. I mean, he was like the one of the most epic debaters I've ever witnessed debate. Whether it was with allies or opponents, it really didn't matter. This is what made him strong. His ability to ask questions, to engage, to lead. But Robinson, he was the exact opposite. He was closed off, insecure, lashing out at pretty much anybody who didn't validate him. Yeah, that was the kind of person that he is. And so when Dreeke laid it out, he said it plainly. Robinson saw in Kirk everything he wasn't. A man who was clear, articulate, confident in his beliefs, and Robin just couldn't handle it, okay? So that's jealousy, that emptiness there, that rage, that's what drove Robinson allegedly down this radical path. And so, folks, this is just the beginning because when you hear what the governor of Utah and the FBI have now officially confirmed and how Johnson's bullets themselves carried a message, you're going to understand exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. Now, most retirees, they admit the exact same thing. They don't feel fully confident in their Medicare plan. They hope it's right, but hope really isn't confidence. This is why I partnered with Chapter Guys. Their advisors, they close the confidence gap by reviewing every Medicare option in detail and showing you exactly what works for you. Now, one of our viewers said, for the first time, I actually felt confident about my Medicare plan. How do you not love that, right? So here's the question. Are you going to live in uncertainty, or are you going to do what most people are already doing? Calling Chapter for clarity? Yeah. And well, it's a totally free call. And I'll just go ahead and tell you that most people are already calling the phone number down on the bottom of your screen right there, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. Phone number is 909-563-8279. All right. Now, Patriots, here's where this whole story goes from whispers to official confirmation, because it's not just neighbors and eyewitnesses anymore. No, the governor of Utah himself stepped in front of the cameras, and with the FBI right behind him, confirmed what we already knew. Tyler Robinson was not living with his parents. He was living with that boyfriend, Lance Twiggs, who is transitioning from male to female. And so here's the kicker. While Robinson is stonewalling investigators, refusing to cooperate, his boyfriend is talking. He's cooperating with the FBI. So let that sink in. The shooter clams up, the boyfriend sings, or trans or whatever. I'm not really sure how that works. And all of a sudden, everything the media called rumor is now locked in by official record. So it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It is a fact. The lies about Robinson being just a lonely kid in his mom's basement, obliterated. He had a double life. He had a radicalized worldview, and people around him, they all knew it. So the realizations, they didn't stop there though, because when the investigators dug a little bit deeper, they found something that should scare every one of us. Robinson's bullets were engraved. Yes, guys, you heard me right. They were engraved with political messages that were tied to radical left-wing ideology. This wasn't some random violence. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment outburst. This was an execution ultimately fueled by hate. And his ammunition itself carried the proof on them. Friends and family members, they confirmed the exact same thing. Well, Tyler Robinson was the lone rabid leftist in a conservative household. This is so wild. The household was conservative, but he was the lone rabid leftist. This gets weirder and weirder, doesn't it? Like, I promise you guys a rabbit hole, right? I hope I'm delivering. So he was the outlier. He was the black sheep. He was obsessively clinging to the idea that Charlie Kirk was spreading hate. He told his own family that Kirk was dangerous, parroting the garbage lies that float around social media. So think about how twisted this is, okay? On the one side, you got a young man who bought the lie, hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and sinker. I think it's hook, line, and sinker. Anyway, he etched it into his bullets. I mean, on the other side, you got a conservative leader, Charlie Kirk, who built a movement on free speech and dialogue. The clash between the two worlds was inevitable, and Robinson chose violence. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing, because the profiler that I told you about, he says this isn't just about one shooter. This is part of a pattern, a profile, a growing epidemic. And so now, folks, this is where the cold, hard science of behavioral profiling collides with the raw emotion of this tragedy. Because the FBI profiler, Robin Dreeke, laid it out clear as day. Tyler Robinson didn't just snap. He wasn't some random lone wolf. He went off in an instant. No, he followed what Dreeke calls an arc of violence. And if you've been paying attention, you're going to see that Robinson checked every single box. So first, the insecurity. He was riddled with it. Then came the wound collecting. This is basically holding on to every slight, every insult, every grievance, like fuel for a fire, so to speak, right? Then you add in the victim mindset, the constant obsession with being wronged, with seeing himself as the oppressed. Dreeke said shooters like this are always trying to prove that they're right, always needing control, always resenting anyone who makes them feel less than. And here's the kicker. Dreeke said the only thing Robinson ever had was curiosity. He never once stopped to question, or he never stopped to genuinely listen or engage with people who thought differently. That's a problem. Now, if you contrast that with Charlie Kirk thrived on curiosity. Kirk didn't run from questions. He invited them. He debated them. He dialogued. he welcomed people from every background into the conservative movement. And if you listened, like with an unbiased ear, he never was really attacking anyone. It was literally fact-based conversation. That's it. There were statistical evidence, there were statistical details that he would use typically to back his arguments. So anyway, that contrast burned Robinson alive because Charlie Kirk, he represented everything that Robinson wasn't: clear, confident, articulate, and secure in his beliefs. That resentment became hate. That hate became obsession. And that obsession turned into violence. But Dreek warns it's never instant. It's never 0 to 100. This is the escalation phase. And Robinson lived it step by step. He sat with family members, fuming about Kirk, parroting lies from social media. He etched hate into his own bullets. He convinced himself that the only way to prove that he mattered was to silence the man that he hated. And then somewhere along the path, there was a tipping point, a trigger moment that pushed him over the edge from words and fantasies into action, allegedly. And so, friends, this is where we really need to pay attention, okay, guys? Because Dreek said it's always the same pattern: insecurity, grievance, obsession, escalation, violence. We've seen it before, and unless we expose it, we'll see it again. So this wasn't a tragedy without warning signs. It was a tragedy that fit the playbook that the FBI already knows by heart. And so now, here's the part that should really make every American furious: the role of social media in radicalizing the shooter, because the profiler says it flat out. The lies, the comparisons, the distortion online, they poured gasoline on Robinson's fire. So here's where it gets absolutely infuriating. Because while the FBI profiler tracked and traced the arc of violence, he also nailed the fuel that pushed Tyler Robinson over the edge: social media radicalization. Now, think about that for a moment. Years ago, online radicalization meant ISIS or foreign terror networks or something like that, right? But now it's fringe communities, echo chambers, and influencers who spread hate while pretending to be justice warriors. Dreek called it the disease of more: the endless comparison culture, the 5-second clips that make people feel worthless, the propaganda that convinces unstable minds that they're part of some grand fight against fascism. And Tyler Robinson swallowed it whole. Lies about Charlie Kirk flooded the feeds. Even high-profile leftists like Stephen King pushed fake quotes, making Kirk out to be this monster who supposedly wanted gays stoned to death, allegedly. This was a total distortion. This was completely ripped out of context, and it was designed to smear. Now, Robinson, he took that garbage as truth, unfortunately. He became the textbook product of a radicalized online environment, insecure, aggrieved, and armed. So here's a contrast that really should stop you cold. On the one side, you got Robinson stewing in echo chambers, believing these lies, never once curious enough to question what he was actually fed. But on the other side, you had Charlie Kirk himself, who welcomed all sorts of questions, even from people who disagreed with him, mainly from people who disagreed with him. I mean, we've seen the footage. Gay conservatives standing up at the events and asking for a place in the movement, and Kirk saying, welcome. Politics is about addition and multiplication, not subtraction. So Charlie Kirk was like embracing people with open arms. Charlie was willing to build bridges to separate politics from personal life, to focus on values like strong borders and a strong country. Meanwhile, Robinson lived in a world of hate, convinced that Charlie Kirk was an enemy to be destroyed. That's the contrast: curiosity versus closed-mindedness, truth versus distortion, life versus death. And the most sickening part, the media knew that this dynamic existed. I mean, they saw how Charlie Kirk engaged with his critics. They saw how lies were being pushed online, and yet they never corrected the record. They just let it fester. They just let the misinformation just continue to fester. And a radical like Robinson, he latched onto it until he pulled the trigger. But see, here's where it gets political, because in September 2025, under President Trump, the establishment is still scrambling to spin this thing, still trying to bury the shooter's left-wing ties. It's crazy. And so now, Patriots, I want to bring this right back down to the present moment here, okay? With President Donald J. Trump back in the White House, because here's the truth. This case doesn't just expose Tyler Robinson. It exposes the media machine that has been running this interference play from day one. Now think about this, okay? The moment rumors surfaced about Robinson's radical ties, The mainstream rushed to dismiss it. Oh no, he was just a troubled kid. Oh no, he lived with his parents. Nothing to see here, folks. They worked overtime trying to frame this thing as anything but what it actually was. It was a left-wing radicalization story. Why? Because this cuts against the very narrative that they've been trying to sell America for years. And so here we are with two independent confirmations that obliterate their spin. On the one side, you got a neighbor who witnessed the shooter's secret life, the kiss, the doctor's appointments, the relationship that the media said didn't exist. But on the other side, you got a retired FBI profiler with 22 years of experience breaking down the shooter's mindset, the insecurity, the obsession, the radical arc that basically fits a disturbing national pattern. Two sources, two vantage points, one undeniable conclusion. Tyler Perry. Tyler Robinson wasn't confused. He wasn't random. He was radicalized by the very same left-wing ecosystem that the Democrats and their media allies still refuse to condemn. And so now, under President Trump, the mask is slipping. The truth is out. But here's the closing shock that you really need to take with you today. Robinson, he didn't just hate Charlie Kirk. He hated what Kirk represented: free speech, conservative strength, curiosity, dialogue, truth, confidence. That's why his bullets carried engravings. This is why his feeds were full of lies. This is why his path fits the FBI's playbook to a T. One neighbor saw it. One profiler explained it. Together, they've blown the lid off this case and destroyed the narrative that the media tried to sell you. So trust me, guys, this is far from over. More details are still coming out. I'm going to keep following this thing. And the deeper the investigations go, the deeper the investigators dig, the darker it's going to get. So anyway, today the facts are pretty clear. The neighbor's testimony and the FBI profiler's analysis actually confirm the radical path of Kirk the shooter, or Kirk's shooter, I should say. So anyway, I hope you guys appreciate this one. Like, subscribe, share this video everywhere, because the truth that they tried to bury is finally breaking through. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the next video.